Let's look at the second part of solving temperature word problems. If you haven't covered part 1 from the previous video, then I suggest you do so before you carry on with this video. You can find part 1 in the temperature playlist within my channel. Before I start, I'm just going to say if you like or subscribe to my channel, then I'll be encouraged to create more videos and help more students. In order to solve temperature word problems easily, you need to be aware of 4 key terms, and knowing the difference between them is important. These 4 terms are decreased by, increased by, increased to, and decreased to. Let's start with the first key term, decreased by. Let's look at the following example. The temperature changed from 30 degrees to 10 degrees Celsius. So if I point the temperature on the thermometer, initially it was 30 degrees and then it dropped to 10 degrees, which means my temperature has decreased. The amount that my temperature decreased by is the difference between 30 and 10 degrees. So looking at the thermometer, 30 degrees is what we call my old temperature. 10 degrees is my new temperature. And the difference between both temperature is what we call the amount that it has decreased by. The difference between both temperatures is 20 degrees Celsius, which means my temperature has decreased by 20 degrees. Now let's look at the second key term, which is increased by. Let's look at the following example. The temperature changed from 10 degrees to 30 degrees. This time, my temperature has not dropped, but increased. It increased from 10 degrees to 30 degrees, which means my old temperature was 10 degrees and my new temperature is 30 degrees. If I point the temperature on the thermometer, you can see that the temperature has increased from 10 degrees to 30 degrees, and the amount that it has increased by is the difference between 10 degrees and 30 degrees, which means my temperature has increased by 20 degrees. So to summarize what we've covered, when we want to work out the amount the temperature decreased by or increased by, we always look for the difference between the old temperature and the new temperature. So to work out the temperature difference, or the amount that the temperature decreased or increased by, we use the following equation. So the temperature difference equals the new temperature take away the old temperature. Let's answer the following example. If the temperature was 5 degrees yesterday, if the temperature decreased overnight to -3 degrees, how many degrees did the temperature decrease by? Pause the video and have a go. So applying the previous rule, to work out the temperature difference, we need to look for the new temperature minus old temperature. In this example, my new temperature is -3. My old temperature is 5 degrees, which equals -3 minus 5. If you've watched a previous video, which is temperature part 1, you should know -3 minus 5 equals -8. This means that my temperature has decreased by 8 degrees. When we work out the temperature difference and the output was a negative number, this means that the temperature has decreased. But if the output was a positive number, it means that the temperature has increased. When we look for the temperature difference, we always look for the value, which means it's 8 degrees. Let's answer a few more questions. Question number 1. The temperature was -1 degrees early this week. If the temperature today is 7 degrees, how many degrees did the temperature increase by? Now we know to work out the temperature difference, or the temperature increased by, we need to use the following equation. The temperature increased by equals new temperature take away the old temperature. During the test, there will be no time to write all these words. That's why it's advisable to use abbreviations. So let's abbreviate this equation. Temperature increased by, I can replace that with T and an arrow that's pointing upwards if it's increased by, or downwards if it's decreased by, equals new T which means it's my new temperature, take away old T, which is my old temperature. So that will be quicker and easier to write during the test. Now let's replace the equation with numbers. My new temperature is 7 degrees. So it's 7 take away my old temperature, which is -1. We'll stop here for a moment. So 7 take away -1. Whenever we have two takeaways, we always convert it to a plus sign, which means the temperature increased by 7 plus 1. This means my temperature has increased by 8 degrees. Let's look at another question. Question number 2. The temperature was -3 degrees Celsius early this week. If the temperature today is 3 degrees Celsius, how many degrees did the temperature increase by? Applying the equation that we know, the temperature increased by equals new temperature take away old temperature. Replacing the equation with numbers, my new temperature equals 3 degrees, take away my old temperature equals -3 degrees. In this question, again, we've got two minuses together. This means we convert them into plus. This equals 3 plus 3, which means my temperature has increased by 6 degrees. Let's answer the last question. Question number 3. The temperature was 2 degrees Celsius early in the morning and dropped later on to -3 degrees Celsius. How many degrees did the temperature decrease by? Applying the same rule, the temperature decreased by equals the new temperature take away the old temperature. The only difference here is that the arrow is pointing downwards, and that's because the temperature has decreased. Replacing the equation with numbers, we know that my new temperature is -3, and my old temperature was 2 degrees. If you've watched a previous video, Temperature Part 1, you should know that -3 minus 2 equals -5. And that's because we have two negative numbers, so we add them up, which means my temperature has decreased by 5 degrees. Remember that when we look for the temperature difference, whether it has increased or decreased, we always look for the value, so we look for the number without the sign. In this example, my temperature has decreased by 5 degrees, so -5 minus means it has decreased, and 5 means it's 5 degrees. We have now reached the end of this video. If you wish to learn more about how to solve temperature word problems, then click on Temperature Part 3.